Hello and welcome back to coverage of Grand Prix Houston. This is Gabby Sparts with Luis Scott Vargas in the booth, and we're getting ready to watch Steve Rubin versus Eric Froehlich.
Yeah, and we've got Steve Rubin playing Abzan and with blue, Stubborn Denials, and then Eric Froehlich on Jeskai, Dark Jeskai. So both these decks are playing 4 colors.
Yeah, and these are 2 undefeated players right now. They're running very well this weekend, playing very well as well. What do you think of this matchup? This is kind of like a old tried and true, right?
It is, and I mean, this is one of those classic, like, pretty close matchups. But both decks have a lot of late game power, and even though I think Eric's is a little more concentrated, like Eric has more options the later the game goes, but Steve conversely has a slightly better early game options because he's got Warden of the First Tree and Sylvan Advocate as decent pressure. One thing to note is that Eric, I think, is taking advantage of Reflector Mage being such a big part of these decks by playing something like Monastery Mentor, which is not particularly bad against Reflector Mage. If you play Mentor and play a spell, and they play a Reflector Mage, it's not that bad for you.
So Steve Rubin gets off to a Warden of the First Tree start, and Eric just plays a land. So he gets to attack and actually pump the Warden, level it up, so to say, to make it into a 3/3. Hit Eric pretty hard. And Eric can't really do anything about this here.
Right, if Eric had a Bloodstained Mire, he could have gotten a Mountain to cast the Fiery Impulse in his hand. Instead, he's forced to get a tapped Smoldering Marsh, which is, that's a pretty big downside. Eric just drew the wrong fetch land here, and instead is going to get hit by a 3/3, and now his Fiery Impulse can't kill it, at least until he gets Spell Mastery.
Right, now I was going to say, it will be able to kill it eventually, but eventually might mean he takes a lot of damage from this too. So land for Eric and a Soulfire Grandmaster.
Soulfire Grandmaster is a good follow-up, though, because even though Steve's got a 3/3 out, it's going to hit Eric down to 13 here. If Steve doesn't have a great play this turn, then Eric can get in for 2 lifelink. Eric, especially if you can remove the Sylvan Advocate.
So Steve Rubin plays Sylvan Advocate, but misses a land drop this turn. Gets to attack with Warden of the First Tree, putting Eric down to 13, and then passes the turn back. So painful truths for Eric. Presumably for all the pain.
Yeah, it looks like he's drawing 3 cards. It does have lifelink, though, because of the Soulfire Grandmaster. Unfortunately, it is loss of life, not damage. That would be a pretty funny combo.
Lest you forget, it does have lifelink. Not a combo in particular. Wow, he has to discard to hand size.
Eric using the infrequently seen draw 3, discard 1 painful truth mode. But I think this is actually still going fine for Eric. Like, yes, he's going to take a bunch of damage. He's going to probably go down to 5 here. But if Steve can't play a spell this turn, Eric's next turn is presumably pretty good. One of the things discarding painful truth does is activate Spell Mastery. So now Eric can Fiery Impulse away the Sylvan Advocate, gaining 3 off the Soulfire, attack for 2, gaining 2 more.
Yeah, Soulfire looking pretty good right here. The other thing not to forget, it's putting cards in the graveyard right now. He has a Dig Through Time in hand, so it is not a complete waste.
No, definitely, and actually it might be better for Eric to have those cards in the graveyard.
Yeah, so Steve gets to play another Sylvan Advocate this turn. He did find another land, which is good for him, and he gets to crash in for another 5.
Unfortunately for him, it's actually a basic forest. He only has 2 basic forests in his deck, 1 plains, 1 swamp, and it's one of the few lands that can't help him cast a lot of his black spells. So he's kind of still stuck on the castable spells here.
So if you're Eric here, you have a pretty interesting turn, correct? What are some of your options right here?
So Fiery Impulse is definitely appealing, but now that there's a second Sylvan Advocate, it's way less good because it doesn't let you block. I think just slamming Kalitas is going to be Eric's play here. If Steve doesn't draw black or blue mana, if he misses on lands this turn, then he doesn't even, Steve does, first of all, doesn't have an attack. Second of all, Eric gets to untap and start playing spells into Kalitas, but Steve drew a black source here, so this is going to be really bad for Eric. He actually might just lose the game almost on the spot. Steve now has Murderous Cut, so he's going to be able to cast Murderous Cut on Kalitas, and that's going to put Eric in a pretty deep hole. Like, Eric can chump the Warden, go up to 7, then go down to 3 from the 2 Advocates, but then he's going to have to deal with the 3 creatures and have nothing in play. Whereas if Steve hadn't drawn a land that turn, Eric would have been able to untap with Kalitas, cast a removal spell, attack with Kalitas, and be in great shape.
Yeah, not to say chumping with Soulfire Grandmaster here, not really what you want to do. So, yeah, this pretty much unlocks Steve's hand. Let's see what he... Yes, it looks like Murderous Cut is a choice. Delving 3 away.
And I think he might actually add to the board here. I think he might have another Sylvan Advocate in his hand.
Just based on how he tapped? It certainly seems like it.
Yeah, he chose to delve an additional amount. Oh, it looks like he might just actually run out of face-up Den Protector, just go for it all. And I think he wants to end the game before Eric gets to 6 mana. Chandra is the common board sweeper in the Jeskai decks, and I don't think Eric's going to be able to play enough spells to survive here.
Chandra would be excellent here because not only can it clean up the whole board, it's going to duress.
This is one of those duress for info sort of situations.
All right, that was a very quick game by Steve Rubin. That's kind of what they want to do against. Eric had a full hand, chock full of spells, but you can't deploy all your spells in time, and that's kind of what can happen right there.
Right, and Eric has access to cards like Painful Truths and Dig Through Time, so he's got a lot more card draw. His deck definitely gets better as the game goes on, but Steve played 1-drop, pumped it on turn 2, played a 2-drop, played a 2-drop, and then that was enough, combined with the removal spell.
So we're going to take a look at our backup match. We have Justin Cohen playing Pascal Maynard. Both players are 5-1 currently, and it is a mirror match of Hardened Scales.
Well,
Surprise.
Instead of having a Hardened Scales deck in each match, we decided to combine the two, have them all in one match, and then have the other match be no Hardened Scales decks.
So what do you make of this board so far? It looks like Justin has Hardened Scales. How important is the card in the mirror? It seems very important.
It's really big because if you play it, you're all playing the same cards, and your cards are just much much better. And it looks like Pascal's actually, he's debating on his third turn which what play to make this turn, and he's also got a Jamoka's Command, which is what Justin used to get rid of Pascal's Hardened Scales. They both have 4/4 hangerbacks. They're both going to have the same lands in play. I mean, this is truly a mirror where both players are just playing all 4 of them. So you're going to see a lot of duplicates here.
Yeah. So it looks like Pascal's going to go ahead and play the Canopy Vista, which does unlock that Jamoka's Command in hand. Does Pascal have any other options other than that? I guess he could play Mana Gorger Hydra.
He could play Mana Gorger, just tap out for that. He could play an Endless One, but it looks like he's going to use the Jamoka's Command. So Justin could have not used the hanger back there. I think that was actually a reasonable thing to think about. Pascal's going to decide what he wants to do with his Jamoka's Command. Killing the Hardened Scale is certainly part of it. He could fight the 2 hanger backs, and they both could die, and just both make 4/1/1s. He could also make his hangerback a 5/5 by paying 1 and tapping it, and then fight. But then Justin would get 4/1/1 flyers, and Pascal wouldn't have any. So,
yeah, and then you also run the risk of potentially Justin having a Nissa or anything like that.
Right.
That would be a beating.
If you kill Justin's hangerback and then he goes Nissa, that's already almost game even without a Hardened Scales, and he actually has another Hardened Scales in his hand right now.
So this is an interesting decision right here, especially because Pascal does not. I do not believe he has another Hardened Scales in hand.
No, I would almost lean towards just killing the Hardened Scales and making my hangerback bigger and not actually fighting the opposing hangerback. But it looks like he's going to just trade the 2. The risk is exactly what you pointed out. If Justin has a Nissa, things go quite poorly for Pascal.
So the thing that we don't know, because we tuned in to this a little bit late, it's entirely possible that Justin has played in a way that doesn't let Pascal know. Maybe he's playing in a way that he doesn't represent that he has Nissa. And if that's the case, maybe he feels more okay doing this play.
It's possible. Though I think that Justin, judging by what's happened so far, wouldn't have had the opportunity to play Nissa, though. Yeah, actually, it looks like he doesn't have one, so that does work out for Pascal. It's just, if Justin had a Nissa here, it seems like it would be really hard to come back from it.
Right. No, that play's a little spooky. I'm not going to lie.
So Justin he's got the land, he's got a Hardened Scales, he's got a Mana Gorger. The thing is, Justin's in the spot Pascal was just in. He's now fearing Pascal's Nissa, so maybe he just attacks and hopes to trade off because he doesn't want to follow up Nissa to get him.
Oh, it's scary for both players, for sure. We've seen over and over this weekend how powerful Nissa is in the deck, so we just want to make sure. Yeah, it looks like he agrees with you. He might be okay just making a lot of trades here and not having to worry about what happens if I add 4 power to the board out of nowhere.
And we're going to see Justin just slam Mana Gorger and a Hardened Scales here.
So we'll take a look back at how Justin and Pascal did, but we're ready to go back to our first match. So back again, Steve Rubin versus Eric Froehlich. This time, Eric gets to be on the play.
And this time, Steve doesn't have a Warden. He doesn't have Forest Warden. Instead, he has a blue-black land.
Yeah.
That's just how decks and standard work these days, I suppose.
Yeah, but Eric's start is also a little bit clunky. He has all enters the battlefield tapped lands. Couldn't really do anything on turn 2 either.
Though Eric really hopes that Steve has a Warden here and not a Sylvan Advocate. Because if Steve plays a Warden and Eric goes end of turn Fiery Impulse, untap Painful Truths for 3, that's great. If Steve plays an Advocate, Eric first of all can't Fiery Impulse it, and second of all will have to discard on his turn if he casts a Painful Truths for 3.
Yeah, and exactly what you were talking about is what we're going to see. This is not what Eric wants to see. Big problem for him. Doesn't get to fire off that Fiery Impulse. And now, what do you do?
Well, he's got a Roast. I don't mind. Well, I would probably, I think I'd lean towards just casting the Painful Truths anyway. The reason is Roast costs 2 mana, so then next turn Eric can go Roast, leave up Disdainful Stroke, and be in pretty good shape still.
Yeah, so Eric's going to go ahead and draw 3. But he is going to have to discard a hand size here.
This is actually a tough choice because you want all your spells, you also want all your lands, you want all the cards. Partially because Eric has 2 Delve spells in hand. It's tempting to just discard a land and just hope, because if you have a land for next turn still, and you just hope to draw a land by the next turn. So I like this play. I will fully admit it's a bit greedy though.
Yeah, so Eric goes ahead and discards the land. A little rough, yes. If he doesn't draw more lands here, it could, cards could get stuck in his hand. He has so much gas.
And he's hoping Steve doesn't have like a really big follow-up play. I mean, Steve's best option is maybe like an Anafenza. The good thing is Roast does take it down, so the Advocate's kind of innocuous in the first 4 or 5 turns. All of a sudden it becomes Tarmogoyf sized, but for right now it's not delivering a giant beating.
It does look like Steve has a Reflector Mage, so if he wanted to bounce something at any point, that is an option he has available to him. It looks like he's going to go with a dual play of, cast the Warden, pump it up, and an attack from Sylvan Advocate.
So Eric drew a Bloodstained Mire, so he's happy now that he discarded the land.
Yes.
Had he drawn like another expensive spell there, he would have much rather have kept it, but I think it worked out.
It was a high EV play. I really like it. It puts him in a really good spot if he does draw a land right there, which he did.
And so now I think that Roast plus Disdainful Stroke is a pretty good option. He could play Monastery Mentor, but I guess Murderous Cut. He could do both those things, but then the follow-up Siege Rhino could be annoying.
Yeah, I mean, if you're Eric, you're also suspicious. Not even suspicious, but you're coming into turn 4. It's the first time. How likely is it that Steve Rubin has a Rhino? It's pretty likely. So you just want to be able to counter that when that happens.
Yeah, so Eric's going to be pretty happy with how his turn plays out. When you can trade your 2 mana spell for their 4 mana spell, and this is how the Dark Jeskai deck actually wins. It casts Painful Truths, which to draw 3 cards, and then it trades 1 and 2 mana spells for your opponent's spells. So that is how you get an advantage. But I mean, the game is certainly not over. It just this was a good sequence of events for Eric.
Well, the nice thing is that as the game progresses too, Steve's Sylvan Advocate in play, which really unassuming right now, does become a pretty substantial threat. So he does have a little bit of that advantage right there. But here we go, Siege Rhino. Eric's going to go ahead and counter that.
Steve giving up major Advocate value by not having Shambling Vent in his deck. It also gives your land creatures +2/+2. But
Sylvan Advocate is pretty cool. I guess the real question is, what is he advocating for?
I don't know. I guess the lands, because presumably it makes the lands bigger.
Very nice islands from Eric.
But like any good advocate, it requires a lot of resources before we really start advocating. You really need to you really need to get it going until you're resource rich.
So the play we were talking about happens. Disdainful Stroke from Eric counters that Rhino, and we move to an untap for Eric. He finds another land off the top.
Yeah, and this is a great turn for Eric, because not only does he play Mentor and a Fire Impulse, 2 spells in the same turn, killing Steve's Advocate, he also gets a token off the Mentor, which means that even if Steve now kills the Mentor, Eric got some value, and if Steve doesn't kill the Mentor, then Eric just untaps and casts Dig Through Time and just completely goes off.
So very, very good turn for Eric, and this is what you were saying. This is how the deck wins, right? Now that you have a Monastery Mentor in play, everything that you draw from here on out, and you have a lot of ways to draw more spells and do more things, you're just going to get that value from those prowess monk tokens.
Yeah, so Steve's now forced to cast Ultimate Price to get rid of the Mentor, which leaves Eric with a 1/1. Also, Steve used his whole turn. Look, Steve used his whole turn on 1 spell, which, I mean, he had to. I think that was the right play. But now Eric's full on into Dark Jeskai mode, where you're casting 2 to 3 spells per turn.
Dark Jeskai mode. Eric with a very nice choice of islands right there.
Oh, sorry, Grixis White? Is that better?
Grixis. We've heard a lot of things this weekend.
Yeah, what it really indicates to me is, like, Shards of Alara helped name the 3-color shards. What we really need is now a 4-color set, so the 4-color, shard plus wedge combinations
we have
can get something.
Guilds, and we have the shards, and now we need the 4-color combinations. Wooded Mardu isn't doing it anymore.
Yeah. I liked Moldy Mardu
Moldy
the best.
Mardu's great. Ooh, Painful Truths for Eric Froehlich.
Yeah, and he's got a Dig Through Time and a Jace as well, plus a Murderous Cut. So he's kind of got all the angles covered. He's going to lead off by playing spells before he attacks because of prowess.
Does get to draw
Oh,
3.
the chat does point out we do have the Nephilim. That's, you know, that's the 4-color combination. Your Glint-Eye Nephilim and your Witchmaw Nephilim. Like
Fair enough. Shambling Vent for Eric Froehlich. We see the attack from the monk as well and then a pass. So Eric is kind of low on life at this point, but he does have many ways to gain life here too.
And you know, one of the features of Abzan is that it, you know, and I've said this in many of the rounds we've covered Abzan, is it plays 1 spell per turn because it's a deck, you know, with pretty efficient cards, but a lot of 3 and 4 drops. So it doesn't, until it gets up to 6 or 7 mana, it's playing one spell per turn, and the Jeskai deck's built to take advantage of it. The problem, of course, is the Jeskai deck, a lot of its cards don't impact the board. Eric's cast, you know, 2 Painful Chews this game, and those aren't making a huge impact. And Eric's actually, his life total is getting low enough that Steve could steal this game with a succession of Siege Rhinos.
Yeah, so Eric being at 4 is pretty difficult here. Pretty close to Rhino range at this point, but he does have a dig through time here. So what are you looking for here of your Eric?
Soulfire Grandmaster is actually pretty high on my list because it will let me gain a bunch of life back. Also, something like Kalidas, if you're able to go Kalidas into a removal spell, that's pretty good. You see Crackling Doom and Roast. Eric's just going to take the removal spells. Eric really wants to not go to 3. The difference between 3 and 4 here is huge when you're facing down Siege Rhino.
Dead versus not dead, typically. All right, so on top for Eric, it looks like he found a swamp.
Eric also has a Gideon, so he gets to get a little bit of, you know, value over time with that. Also, the fact that Eric played Shambling Vent last turn is actually very relevant because if his life total gets too under danger, he could start using up his turns attacking with Shambling Vent.
He is pretty safe. As long as Steve can't cast double Rhino in 1 turn, he's pretty safe. And, you know, Steve only has 4 lands right now in play. So, yeah, Rose is going to take care of that Rhino. And Gideon for Eric. Take up also a prowess trigger for that monk.
So what I think this lets Eric do is if Steve plays another Rhino dropping Eric to 1, Eric can then next turn you make a Gideon emblem and then attack with a 3-power Shambling Vent to go back up to 4 to just make sure that Steve can't steal the game with a Rhino.
So there's the soldier token?
Yeah, the Knight Ally.
Knight Ally. Everything's an ally. Except Daily.
Yeah, who's sounds like she should be, but
yeah.
We're actually discussing allies because the Hardened Scales decks frequently play Lantern Scout in their sideboard, and whether there are any other allies to re-trigger Lantern Scout. There weren't very many actually in the deck. The Hydra does not consider itself an ally.
So Steve casts Siege Rhino, putting Eric down to 1. Now Eric is at a very precarious life total. Eric is able to take care of that Rhino, but you know, another Siege Rhino, if he can't counter it, is actually just lethal. Yeah,
and I think this is where you're going to see the Shambling Vent attack for 3 here. It seems like that's just going to be the safest way. Eric's so ahead on resources that there's no reason to risk losing to a Siege Rhino. That I like making a Gideon emblem and then attacking with the Shambling Vent.
I think Eric agrees. I really like that play. He's so far ahead in this game. He just really doesn't need to put himself in any position to die to just like top deck Rhino or even just a Rhino in hand. I mean, you don't know. Steve hasn't been playing 1 spell a turn. He could 100% have another Rhino in hand.
Yeah, definitely. And again, Eric's so far ahead. He's got Crackling Doom. He's got Jace. It's going to be hard for him to lose this game unless Steve steals it with a Rhino. And we've got an important update from the chat here that Ailey, the 2/3, is actually a servant of the Eldrazi, so therefore definitely not an ally.
Oh, obviously. Now it all makes sense. I learned the hard way that Ailey was not an ally when it was very relevant. Yeah, so we're going to see a Jace for Eric in a pass. After that big attack, it puts Eric up to 4 life, which is very nice, especially if Steve happens to have another Rhino here.
And critically, Jace is a 1/3 because of the Gideon emblem, so we could see Jace rumble into the red zone next turn.
Steve's still unable to find any lands and can only ever play 1 spell per turn.
And he concludes that 1 spell per turn is not going to get it done. When Eric, again, starting on like around turn 4, Eric played 2 to 3 spells every single turn.
And that's definitely a weakness of the Abzan deck. It's not very good at doing multiple things per turn. So you have to make sure that everything that you are casting per turn is being significant. And in this case, if Eric is able just to counter all these things with mostly cheap spells and then do something else on his turn, that's pretty punishing for him.
And it looks like Justin actually took the first game there. So Pascal's follow-up of Nissa apparently not good enough. And Justin very far ahead here because both players played a 1-mana enchantment on turn 1, except Justin's is Hardened Scales and Pascal's is Oath of Nissa.
Yeah, how good do you think Gozo Nissa is in this deck?
It's a fine card. It doesn't find Hardened skills. That's actually the only really relevant card in the deck it can't find. I guess Dromoka's Command would be the other one. But it does find Nissa, and it does find creatures, and it does find lands. It's good. It's good card selection. Most of the decks seem to just play one, which just what that indicates to me is that they didn't want to play another land, but there's no other spell they really wanted.
Sure. So they're like,
this is the compromise. It's just we can play Oath of Nissa, which counts as like a third of a land and 2/3 of a spell or something like that.
How many lands do you think, or sorry, how many Hardened scales do you think this deck could potentially play, if it could play as many as it could?
So to no surprise, we actually discussed this.
Okay, that's not surprising.
I talked with Paulo Vitor this week when he was trying to figure out whether he wanted to play the deck, and I asked him this question. He said he guessed around 8. I said I guessed around 7, but maybe it's 7, 8. I could see it even being 9.
Wow, that's pretty good. I mean, we've seen the deck just roll people over when you do have Hardened scales, and then just dirtle around a lot when you don't have it. So I can 100% see that argument.
So Pascal is going to want to play something like a Mana Gorger Hydra this turn. That is one of the more impactful cards in the mirror. It is unfortunate that both Silk Wrap and Dromoka's Command can actually take down the Mana Gorger, though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think you're right. I think we're going to see this Mana Gorger Hydra right now, coming in with no counters for it, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's not very well hydrated yet, but a couple spells later and it becomes gigantic.
So Justin does have that Silk Wrap you were talking about. Dromoka's Command could be a way to take care of this thing too.
Justin's got all the options. He's actually got the perfect draw of 2 forests, a Canopy Vista, and then just like all good spells, including the turn 1 Hardened scales. So, so if he goes Dromoka's Command, he can end up with a 4/4 Hangerback, killing the Hydra, which would be a 2/2. He can also then play a 2/2 Endless One if he wants. He could also, if he wants, play an Endless One first and then make the Endless One bigger and killing the Hydra. You want to diversify your threats because of Silk Wrap. You don't want to this isn't, in game 1, yeah, making a giant Hangerback's awesome, but post-board, once you know they have Silk Wrap, it's not as appealing.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, you don't want to spend all your time just pumping up this Hangerback to just have it all undone in 1 second. So Justin's going to go ahead and crack that Canopy Vista for him. Now he has a wealth of options for this turn.
I do think it's critical that you play 2 spells in the same turn here, so I would suspect the Endless One is coming down as a 2/2, especially since you might play a Nissa next turn. I also like using Dromoka's Command while your opponent's tapped out, especially since it doesn't even work on Hangerback later. So Hangerback becomes, or rather the Mana Gorger later, becomes a 4/4. Kind of like just attacking forward, playing a 2/2 Endless One. That way, even if Pascal has a Silk Wrap, your follow-up plays are pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice getting the Endless One out there for sure. And Justin does have a Nissa in hand. So if, for whatever reason, this Hangerback Walker just does get to live, he gets to go untap Nissa, pump the team by a lot, attack for a lot.
And actually, Pascal is running Valorous stances as well. Both players have access to Valor stance, though. Pascal looks a little bit more prepared for this matchup. He's got 4 Silk Wraps and 3 Valor stance, whereas Justin just has 3 Valor stance, 1 Silk Wrap. So even though Justin actually has the Silk Wrap in his hand, I would imagine Pascal has an edge if the game goes too long
enough. Yeah, that makes sense. So it looks like Pascal does not have another land in hand, from what I could tell. So he can only really play 1 spell this turn, and it looks like that might be Mana Gorger Hydra. Does have an Abzan Falconer in hand.
Yeah, it can't feel great, though. Like, just playing 1 spell a turn when your opponent has boarded in a bunch of removal spells. He doesn't know how many removal spells Justin's boarded in. Turns out it's not actually tons, but Justin has them, so...
Oh, he had a Nissa in hand. Okay, so Pascal can make a plant token here. Yeah, so plant token and pass. How much do you prioritize killing this Nissa now if you're Justin?
You would... I think you would want to kill it if possible. You'd certainly want to kill it rather than deal 4 damage to Pascal. The question is, do you want to kill it more than dealing 10 damage to Pascal? Because Justin could play Nissa -2, make the Endless One a 4/4, Hangerback a 6/6, and then attack both at Nissa. At that point, I would rather just attack Pascal directly. The problem is then Pascal just takes it, and you spent 10 damage to kill a Nissa. So Justin's going to be a little more efficient. He's going to Silk Wrap the plant, hit Nissa for 4, hit Pascal for 2, and then if he has another land, he can actually play a 2/2 Hangerback as well.
Yeah, I like this way better. He also, he gets to do the Hangerback Walker too for 2 more points of power on the board, it's so much more effective than, you know, he basically is wasting 6 points of damage if he's trying to go after the Nissa, and he just attacks and lets the plant token block. So really nice turn for Justin right here. Let's see what Pascal can put together.
Yeah, and now Justin's super far ahead because he actually has the best card possible to have in his hand, which is a Nissa. Pascal doesn't know that yet. And Pascal, at best, is playing one card per turn. He is kind of locked. Yeah, getting stuck on 3 is pretty painful when you just have 2s and 3s. And like Mana Gorger takes an extra turn to rev up. Even if Pascal assumes Justin has nothing in his hand, which I believe he should, it's going to be really hard for him to get out of this. We can actually head back to our main match because I don't think Pascal's got a way out. I think Justin's going to advance to 6-1.
Yeah, so let's take a look back at Justin and yeah, it's Eric and Steve?
Eric and Steve Rubin.
Yeah.
And Eric in a really good spot here. It looks like Steve just didn't have plays for the first couple turns, and Eric has already played adjacent. Actually, Eric, it looks like Steve must have missed a land drop because Eric's ahead on lands too.
Yeah, and this this game is actually further in than it looks like it might have been. Steve, Reflector Mage is a nice way to bounce that Jace and stop it from flipping, which was going to happen next turn, presumably. So that is nice, but Eric's still pretty far ahead.
Yeah, and Reflector Mage is not that much pressure.
Yeah.
Eric's at 21. Looks like he got a hit in with Shambling Vent last turn. Eric has Chandra in hand, which is coming down in a second. So this is going to be a game where I think we're going to see the power of Chandra. She's just going to be able to potentially lock it up or at least kill multiple creatures of Steve's if he plays another small creature.
So I've heard Chandra be compared to the new Elspeth of the new set. What do you think about that?
I think it's a reasonable comparison. Instead of killing big things, her minus kills small things. Granted, Elspeth's ability to make 3 blocking tokens makes the cards play quite differently in that respect, but Chandra also has the ability of drawing a bunch of cards. It lets you discard your hand, draw that many cards +1, which is a very powerful mode that Elspeth didn't really have much on. So my guess is that Elspeth is going to be more impactful overall, but Chandra still is a very good card, and actually Chandra looks really good here.
Yes, it does. So Steve goes the aggro route, plays another Reflector Mage for no bounce, but now Eric gets to untap with 6 lands, and he gets to play Chandra right here and sweep the entire board if that's what he wants to do. I assume that's what he wants to do. It looks pretty good right here.
It looks like the play to me, and you know, Steve is to some degree paying the price. It looks like this Reflector Mage is just in anticipation of Chandra getting scooped up. Steve's playing a 4-color deck and doesn't have his 4th color of mana. I mean, Eric's also playing a 4-color deck. This isn't unique to Steve's deck, but just the fact that Steve's missing a color of mana has made this game a lot harder to win, whereas Eric, wasn't suffering the same fate.
Yeah, the Prairie Stream does find the Sunken Hollow, and now he's at a critical point with this kind of deck where 4 mana / 5 mana lets you play Coco and Rally, but Eric has an online Chandra on the other side of the battlefield, so.
Yeah, and Steve's particular version of the deck is going to lean more on Siege Rhinos and Gideons, but either way, Steve's playing a powerful 4 mana spell. He hit his 4th land, but Eric already has a Chandra. He's going to get to untap, kill the Gideon token with a removal spell, plus Chandra, send both 3/1s at the Gideon. It's going to be hard for Steve to deal with that.
Painful Truth is the draw for Eric.
Eric could put, I think Eric's hand is good enough that he's not going to be incentivized to use Chandra's 0. He could potentially just attack Steve, but that seems a little bit aggressive.
Yeah, so Painful Truth for Eric is going to draw him. Wow, how many cards does he have in hand? Is he going to have to discard? It kind of looks like it.
Eric has like a Silumgar too. Yeah, I mean, having to discard the hand size when you haven't missed any land drops and it's like turn 7 means you're usually crushing. And I think Eric definitely is in that spot.
Yeah, so the Crackling Doom takes care of the Soldier, the Gideon.
Then one of the elementals takes care of the Gideon, and then the other elemental sends Steve down to 12 in their brief times in play.
Yeah, we really get to see the power of Chandra right here. It's looked very, very impressive.
And Steve's got 2 Wingmate Rocks in hand. That card is great, but I don't know if he's ever going to get it to attack with the creature this game.
When you're playing this matchup against Jeskai and you're trying to raid a Wingmate Rock, that can be one of the most demoralizing things to do because oftentimes it just does not happen. Yeah,
Wingmate Rock, when you cast it as just like a 5 mana 3/4, it has to get a pretty low rating.
Yeah, that's the Rock of Shame. That's I'm not afraid to call it that. There it is, the Rock of Shame.
Exactly.
Yeah, so if you're Eric, you're feeling pretty good at this point of the game.
Yeah, Eric's got a lot of really good options. He could have Murderous Cut the rock. He actually didn't need to. He might just go Silumgar, attack for 6 with Chandra. He's actually very close to having lethal with just the 2 Shambling Vents, but he doesn't need to go in for that.
Oh, he's at 15 life, so Shambling Vent definitely something a little bit more appealing if he's worried about dying to a Rhino or something, but you know, at this point he doesn't really have to worry about that. So 2 mana for Grandmaster, and it looks like this might be 6?
Yeah, it looks like the
it's
just
a
a hard
cut.
cast Murderous Cut. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, he bought it back. He used the Soulfire Grandmaster's ability, which is, you don't use that often, but it's very, very relevant.
Very nice.
Ticks up Chandra and smashes for 6. I don't see how Steve comes back into this game.
I don't
Eric
think
is
he
just
can.
so far ahead.
Yeah, I really don't think he can either. He has another Wingmate Rock of Shame, but you know you just die to that too.
Yeah, you think Steve's just dead on board if he plays another Wingmate here. So I think he might just be playing a Reflector Mage.
Well, Reflector Mage takes care of that Soulfire Grandmaster, but then you take 6 from Chandra, so, I mean,
Yeah,
you take another 3, I guess, because you can block one of them.
The 2 Shambling Vents make things a little more difficult as well.
Yeah, I'm not sure what sequence of draws he could have here. He could potentially... Is that a Silk Wrap?
Looks like Silk Wrap plus Siege Rhino is going to be Steve's play, which does leave him not dead on board, but given that Eric has a Murderous Cut in hand, it's going to be pretty trivial for Eric to figure out a way to add up to 8 here.
He also has Silumgar in his hand, so that kind of undoes a lot of things that are happening right here. Yeah, so Prayer Stream is a draw for Eric. I'm gonna have your Eric. Oh, okay.
So
we're going the aggro
all
route.
Eric needs to do is Murderous Cut the Siege Rhino or roast the Siege Rhino. I guess he's actually doesn't have quite enough mana. Oh yeah, and he's got plus a Shambling Vent. Yep, that'll do it. That adds up to 8, and Eric advances to 7-0. Steve Rubin falls to 6-1. Though, you know, because you make day 2 at 6-3, both these players are actually already in day 2 as soon as they sat down. Of course, Eric, if he makes it at 9-0, is going to be a little happier.
Right,
but
of course.
6-1 and 7-0 are both great records.
Yeah, no, I mean, both players are in a really good spot right now. This being the first loss for Steve Rubin's also pretty great. You know, can win the last 2 rounds, go into the next day with just 1 loss, looking pretty good. Eric's sitting very happy here at 7-0. It's excellent. Well played by both players. Very good match.
Yeah, and we're gonna get them. We're gonna see the match results soon enough. But my assumption is that Justin Cohen ended up defeating Pascal, and now we've got the Eldrazi Menace. They're invading Standard. We've got 2 Sky Spawners and 2 Hedron Crawlers, which powered out an Ugin. Oh yeah, Calcano's playing a really sweet deck. He actually showed me before the tournament started.
Tell me a little bit about this deck.
So it's a blue-red Eldrazi deck but it's not like blue-red aggressive. It's like blue-red Eldrazi ramp, and it's got like P and Kiran Nalar. The cards you can play, the Sky Spawner and Hedron Crawler. It's pretty awesome. And he looks like he's battling against an Abzan deck here with Sherwin Lakhmani, and an Ugin in play is going to be pretty tough for Abzan to beat, especially since it's backed up with Eldrazi Sky Spawner.
Yeah, and you see the really nice synergy between, you never see the alliance of Ugin with the Eldrazi. I guess that doesn't make a lot of sense, but it works out very well right here.
Yeah, and Calcano looks like he takes this game, but we're going to move, the players are going to move to game 3 because it looks like Sherwin was up a game.
So taking a look at the sideboards for the players.
Calcano has got access to Disdainful Stroke, Tears of Valakut, which I like Disdainful Stroke against Abzan in general. Tears of Valakut killing flyers is not really where you want to be. But as we saw, Eric used Disdainful Stroke pretty effectively against Steve Rubin last round, who's also playing Abzan. That I would expect to see Calcano boarded in as well.
Yeah, what does Sherwin have in the sideboard?
Well, both players actually have access to Disdainful Stroke, and given that Calcano cast an Ugin and has Thought Not Seer and like Drowner of Hope in his deck, it seems like Disdainful Stroke would be pretty good there too. Both players seem to be in pretty good spirits going into game 3 here.
Would you be interested in something like Transgressamine right here?
Transgress is also decent. Basically almost every matchup where Disdainful Stroke is going to be good, Transgress seems like it'd be good too. The question is how much room do you have for all those slots, and given that, Sherwin's just got a couple of each, I could see just bringing both in.
What about something like Flaying Tundrils?
Does
it kill enough things?
I don't think it does. Even though it does kill Sky Spawner and all its ilk, as well as a Hedron Crawler, well, and P and Kiran Nalar, that's getting to the point where it's kind of interesting. Well, if he depends what Sherwin saw, because Calcano's playing a kind of rogue deck list, and I think that one of the advantages to that is that Sherwin could play a game 1 and still not know half of Calcano's deck.
Sure.
So
would it be too risky to bring in something like Flame Tendrils right there?
Well, if he saw Matter Reshaper, Hedron Crawler, Sky Spawner, AMP, and Alar, doesn't actually seem unreasonable. Normally you wouldn't against that sort of thing, but I could see doing that.
It's very cool. We've seen we did a deck tech with Athena earlier. She's playing mono blue Eldrazi too.
Yeah, I actually saw her round 1. The deck's pretty good. I remember you were streaming it last week.
I was.
You had nothing but good things to say about it.
No, it's a fun deck. I like it. I mean, Ghostfire Blade is a very cool Magic card, and it's so good in the deck. I mean, I realized very quickly that I was boarding it. Sometimes I was boarding it out, and then I realized that that's just a huge mistake. The card is actually amazing in the deck, at least.
I played Ghostfire Blade at the Standard Pro Tour in Vancouver just a couple months ago. I mean, it's a powerful card.
Yeah, so Sherwin's going to go ahead and start. We have a forest for him.
Which almost assuredly signals a Warden of the First Tree. That is the turn 1 play of the day. Oh,
Oath of Nissa.
Actually, it's Oath of Nissa. Expectations blown here, because it looks like Sherwin's got 3 Oaths of Nissa in his deck as well. Oath of Nissa is a really good card. I like it existing. It smooths things out and makes it so your decks are a little bit more consistent.
Where are you on the debate of whether or not it's okay to call this a green ponder?
I think it's the green ponder. It's really more like Anticipate, but I think that saying it's nothing like ponder is a bit of a stretch.
So Sherwin's going to crack the polluted Delta. Calc only had a Shivan Reef. No turn 1 plays. He doesn't have that many turn 1 plays, does he?
No, he doesn't. His best turn 1 play is a Wandering Fumarole, which I'm glad to see he's playing 4 of. Calcano, of course, famously won a Standard Grand Prix with 3 Sulfur Falls in his blue-red deck. And when asked, he did not have a great explanation as to why he was in the 4th. But he also won the Grand Prix, so he's got the chips.
You can't complain against that. Well, so this hand for Christian Calcano, land, Hedron Crawler, Stroke, lots of Matter Reshapers and an Ugin.
So Calcano hoping that the Ugin gets taken here. It looks like it is. Wow, that's interesting. I guess the reason that it has to be, even though it's not very appealing, is that you couldn't take the Hedron Crawler because Transgress only hits 3 or greater. So taking one of the 3 Matter Reshapers, well, unlikely to matter. You'd rather just take the Ugin. The game's probably going that long.
Unlikely to matter? I see what you did there.
I was just describing the game state.
Right. I see.
Believe what I'm supposed to be doing.
I see. So, yeah, Calcano is going to play that Hedron Crawler. This turn, we know that there's Matter Reshapers in the books. There's about 3 of them.
And he drew Swiftwater Cliffs, which I am happy to see that he's played 3 of. All right, 3 Swiftwater Cliffs. That's close enough. Yeah. It actually looks like a Sulfur Falls, and right here it's strictly better because it actually, gains
him a life. The nice thing, too, is that because he has Hedron Crawler, he gets to play the Matter Reshaper here.
Look, Calcano chose not to. And the reason he did is he's got that Disdainful Stroke. It's actually a really weird spot. Sherwin has the information, so if he has a 4-drop, he might not want to play it into Disdainful Stroke. But if he has a 4-drop, what is he never going to play it? It's not a great spot. He doesn't have anything in play.
It looks like Cut was a draw for Sherwin. So, yeah, he agrees with you. He's just going to go ahead and pass here.
And Calcano really hoping to draw a land there to play Matter Reshaper and leave up Disdainful Stroke. This is exactly like the game we saw with Paulo and Webb, where one player's leaving up 2 mana and the other player's just refusing to play into the counterspell.
I mean, you at a certain point can't do that. You just let him counter you on top, play something significant, and then what do you do?
Yeah, I definitely agree. And Calcano's getting a huge advantage out of this because he's still playing cards every turn. Every turn his board gets better, and every turn Sherwin's just falling further and further behind. So I think at some point Sherwin's just going to have to go for it.
Yeah, he was able to, the entire game he's been, respecting that he knows how powerful Sherwin's 4-drops are, 4+. Definitely doesn't want to lose to them. So he's been playing in such a way where he's developing his board, but is still being very careful about this, and it's really paying him off.
Flying Tendrils, which Sherwin actually did side in. I saw a glimpse of one in the deck. Looks like it'd be pretty good here. It doesn't trigger the Matter Reshaper, and it would kill both Hedron Crawlers as well. So would be a pretty good play. It even gets under Disdainful Stroke.
Yeah, absolutely. So hopefully he sided one in. Doesn't seem like he has one in hand. Reflector Mage is going to bounce that Matter Reshaper.
And it stops all 3 of them from being cast next turn. Reflector Mage's text can be quite a beating sometimes. And in this particular case, the fact that Calc can't cast not only the Matter Reshaper that got bounced, but any of them because they're all called Matter Reshaper, seems to be very, very relevant.
So Tomb of the Spirit Dragon for Christian Calcano and a pass back.
Well, Tomb's not bad. Gains him 2 life a turn right now.
Yeah.
Gains him a life for each colorless creature he has. He's got two crawlers sitting there. The Ugin would have actually come out fairly soon here if it wasn't taken.
It does also let him keep Disdainful Stroke up every turn, so that's pretty nice.
So at this point, I think that Sherwin may be deciding to play just... He's got Wingmate Rock in hand, which he doesn't want to get countered, so maybe he plays Siege Rhino to bait out the Disdainful Stroke. And if you're Calcano, it seems hard to let Siege Rhino resolve when you could counter it, but he has to be worried about what this signifies.
Especially given how long this game has gone so far. Because at this point, you can pretty much assume that he has drawn a couple of those Rhinos, he has drawn a couple of those Wingmate Rocks, so he's going to go ahead and gain that life. He's going to go up to 19. He let that Siege Rhino resolve. Seems like he's very worried about the Wingmate Rock. Maybe he correctly assumes that that card he just can't beat, so he'll figure out how to deal with this Rhino in some fashion.
I think that's actually a great play by Calcano, especially since he's got a handful of Matter Reshapers. He can just double block Siege Rhino with 2 Matter Reshapers and end up cards. He also he even has the Roast.
Oh, there you go.
That makes it even an easier decision.
So Matter Reshapers start coming down again, and he's still going to keep respecting the Disdainful Stroke. He's been playing around that Wingmate Rock the entire game, and it's really paying him off in a big way.
Yeah, Calcano's patience has been rewarded here. His Disdainful Stroke has kept Sherwin. First of all, it kept Sherwin from playing anything on turn 4, where he could have played Siege Rhino and didn't. And then later, it let Calcano play a bunch of Matter Reshapers, but still have it up and stop a Wingmate Rock. Calcano's now gaining 3 life off Tomb of the Spirit Dragon. Calcano's deck is actually gaining control here. That may have been a Thought Knot Seer.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
And if so, then that gives Calcano exactly the information he needs to make good decisions, especially concerning Disdainful Stroke.
And that is what Calcano drew. Thought Knot Seer is going to take a look at Sherwin's hand.
And Sherwin has a Murderous Cut. He can kill Thought Knot in response. And, I played a lot with Thought Knot Seer at this point, and it's kind of...
Oh, did you?
I did, in fact. And it's kind of funny that if you have a kill spell, like a Murderous Cut, and you kill it in response, it makes it so you draw the card before the first ability resolves, which means that Calcano now gets to choose between Sherwin's whole hand, including the new card, before making his decision.
Very neat interaction. Sherwin's going to fight. Yes, Sherwin's going to fight the Reflector Mage to the Matter Reshaper. See what Calcano finds. A Roast. Gets it in his hand. Yeah, and now Calcano has a choice. Wingmate Rock or Cut.
So Calcano can cast Disdainful Stroke on either of these cards. If he takes Wingmate Rock, then he could let the Cut resolve on Thought Knot, 'cause maybe he doesn't care about it. He could also just take Murderous Cut, and one of the reasons to do that is that Wingmate Rock's so expensive that you can force Sherwin to pay 5 for Wingmate Rock. But it looks like he's going to take the safe route, and one of the reasons to do that is to make it so even if Sherwin draws like a Duress, you don't just lose to a Wingmate Rock.
So Sherwin's going to take down that Thought Knot Seer, draw another card. Looks like it was... I couldn't quite get a peek of it. I think it was a Gideon.
Which he can cast using any mana because of Oath of
Oh, there you go, there you go. I've actually seen that matter in a lot of... and I've heard it from mattering from other people too, especially when playing Chandra.
Yeah.
In like the ramp deck.
It can be relevant.
Yeah.
Especially if you forget about it and then lose the game, which is what happened to me. But, making mistakes isn't all bad. I will remember. I'm much more likely to remember that in the future, given the fact that I forgot it there.
Honestly, that's the nice thing about making mistakes in general.
And see, look,
there you go.
I like Sherwin's tapping. He's taking advantage of the fact, even if he didn't need to tap this way, he's getting value out of Oath of Nissa. Not like actual value, but just like moral value.
There's sending a message is important, and that's kind of what he's doing here. So, there you go. Gideon comes out.
And Calcano has the Disdainful Stroke. Yep. Both players both players had a lot of information about the other player's hand this game, but that information is running dry as both players just kind of empty their hands. Though I think Calc drew it. It's the Ugin. Number 2. He could cast it here. Looks like he boarded in the second one. That's where it came from. But he's gonna wait. He's just gonna play a bunch of Matter Reshapers and put himself in a position to be stable on board. Ugin, of course, comboing because it doesn't exile any of his colorless creatures. This deck is really cool.
Yeah, no, it's very sweet. I'm happy that we got him in feature match. This is a cool deck.
So we're allowed to cheer for the Eldrazi in Standard, but we just can't in Modern.
Yeah,
is that how it works?
That is how it was explained to me, so that's what we're going to go with. Looks like Calc's going to go on the Mono Matter Reshaper aggro deck. Let's see what Sherwin can do against this. Well, even hand, he doesn't have anything in hand, does he?
Sherwin could draw something like a Wingmate Rock. He doesn't know that Calcano's got an Ugin ready to roll, but Yeah, Sherwin has powerful cards in his deck too. That's one of the advantages of playing 4 colors.
So Windswept Heath, and not sure what the last card is. But things are looking pretty grim at this point.
The thing is, Sherwin's actually behind on board, and that's without factoring in the Ugin. Oh, there's Flaying Tendrils. Wow, that's actually a huge swing, because not only does it wipe out Calcano's entire board, again, the Matter Reshapers don't trigger because it exiles.
That was huge.
Calcano also can't cast Ugin anymore.
That was huge.
Luckily for Calcano, he does still have that roast, and he drew an Eldrazi Sky Spawner. So he could kill the Reflector Mage. I don't know if he needs to. Tomb of the Spirit Dragon lets him gain 2 life. So he's kind of okay just taking 3 a turn and gaining 2. That's not that big of a deal.
Oh, yeah. So boarding in that Flaying Tendrils, very good right there. Calcano chooses to gain life there instead of... I think he has another Matter Reshaper he maybe could have played.
Well,
or I think they're all dead.
Yeah, he's got an Ugin. He could actually sacrifice the Eldrazi Scion to play the Ugin. He's still got that roast from before. So Sherwin knows about the roast. He doesn't know about the Ugin yet.
Yeah.
And even though it took Tendrils to kill only 4 creatures, that was still pretty good. Oh, wow.
Oh, wow. So Transgressive Mind is going to take that Ugin from Calcano.
And that's one of the disadvantages of waiting on the Ugin, is that Sherwin is playing Hand Disruption. So we've got ourselves a game, even though Calcano is getting value out of Spawning Bed of all cards. He still is, I think, ahead, but without the Ugin in play, then he's not as ahead as he would have been otherwise.
Also because the Reflector Mage attack means that Calcano can just crash back with all of his Scions, whereas before maybe he would have stayed back and blocked some. The roast is going to take care of that Reflector Mage, though.
Calcano going off with Tomb of the Spirit Dragon, just gaining 5 a turn now. Actually,
it actually matters a lot.
Yeah. Calcano's got 2 tombs.
Oh my gosh, there it is again!
All right, that was 5 drills that time, and that took out those 5 creatures. So, and there's a Drowner Hope with a Murderous Cut for the Drowner. Actually, he tapped all his black because he had to cast Tendrils.
He couldn't. Yeah.
The Drowner's still getting Murderous Cut. All right, this is some good back and forth.
Wow.
This is just good, clean magic.
So I don't believe Calc has any more Ugins in his list, does he?
No, he's used both of his, but he does have more Drowner's Hope, and actually, here comes Vile Aggregate as a 3/5.
Vile Aggregate looking pretty good right here, especially with Trample. He'll be able to get through most of the things. So Sherwin, I think, found a land from the top, which is not great.
Vile Aggregate and Drowner. Calcano had some good first picks here. He's multiple Sky Spawners, and it looks like he's actually going to win this game.
Wow, through 2 Flaying Tendrils. That was so impressive.
Yeah, that was a pretty sick game.
That was nuts. Well, so Flaying Tendrils looked very good, but Calcano actually managed to pull it out.
Flaying Tendrils was in fact super effective that game both times it was cast, but Calcano managed to just outlast Sherwin. Even though Sherwin was killing a lot of his creatures, all of Cal's creatures came in multiples or drew a card when they died, and just eventually Calcano managed to pull ahead there.
Yeah, so it was very cool. The players, Calcano moves on to 7-0. Sherwin picks up his first loss of the day. Very cool for both players. We're getting ready to take you over, guys, to features that we have recorded for you today, and then we're getting ready to watch a lot more Magic in round 8.
Hello there. We are here at Grand Prix Houston.